If you're dealing with asthma issues, it can really be tricky to figure out because not only are there different types of asthma, but it seems even within the different types of asthma, there can be more than one possible underlying cause creating that problem from person to person. So it can become very frustrating trying to figure out answers on ways to improve the situation for you. And that may be part of why the reason is some treatments will really help somebody, but it might only help them most of the time. It might not help them all the time. They might be dealing with some issues from time to time. It seems like I said time a lot right there, but in this video I want to help you understand some of the more common underlying causes that can create this trouble and some steps that might be able to create some improvement for you. Let's jump in.
TC Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
Now remember, I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving anybody medical advice here. Asthma is not something you want to mess around with. I don't want anything that you learn here to restrict your ability to get help if you need help. I want to share some of this scientific literature that I found and help you understand some of the connections that are often seen with asthma that might give you some insights into what's creating the trouble for you. Because there seems to be a variety of things that can change in the body that will magnify a person's ability to experience these types of symptoms where I just can't breathe and everything's tightening and what is happening. And there also seems to be a variety of issues that can stimulate this response, whether that be allergies, which is very common to see with asthma, or maybe some type of environmental irritant that's around you, or maybe a person's heightened ability to be irritated by different environmental factors. So there's a variety of issues going on. It's really hard to get a real clear picture from person to person. So when we want to improve this situation, we want to put whatever we can in our favor. So let's dig into some of these scientific papers that I found. And on this one on asthma medication, and autonomic nervous system dysfunction, and I'll put the links to all of these studies in the description below this video so you can dig deeper into this if you need to. But in this paper it says, in many studies, increased parasympathetic responsiveness has been associated with clinical asthma or the worsening of asthma in adults. So when we're looking at this parasympathetic response, basically the autonomic nervous system is this system in the body that runs a lot of the show behind the curtains. Like, we don't need to think about a lot of these things happening, they just kind of happen automatically. And this autonomic nervous system has two sides. It has a sympathetic fight or flight side, and it also has a parasympathetic rest and digest side. So you can see both of those sides are very important. Hey, shut up, I'm talking about asthma right now. They both have functions in the body, and the problem is that sometimes people can get really stuck in one of these states, and that can create a wide variety of health issues. So if someone's body gets stuck in that sympathetic state most of the time, it can kind of cause them to maybe fly off the handle. Maybe they're yelling at the mailman because they don't like the shorts that he's wearing, or maybe it can create some insomnia issues or even some blood sugar handling issues. There's a variety of things that can go wrong if someone's stuck in that sympathetic state. But if someone is stuck in this parasympathetic state, it's very common for us to see allergies and asthma. And this is not a diagnostic situation. It doesn't mean if a person has asthma that they're stuck in this parasympathetic state, and it doesn't mean that if someone is stuck in this parasympathetic state that they're going to have asthma. But in our network of health professionals that spans more than 40 countries, we see that it's very common when someone appears to be dealing with what we call a parasympathetic imbalance, where the body is just really stuck in that parasympathetic state most of the time, that it's much more common for us to see these asthma situations. And when we're looking at this autonomic nervous system and someone being stuck in this parasympathetic state, it's also very common to see someone dealing with allergies. And I'll put a link in the description below to a paper that talks about how it's common to see people dealing with allergies and asthma. So that's another connection that we see in this overly parasympathetic state. And we see that allergy medications often work because they have the ability to really push a person into that sympathetic fight or flight state. So it's taking them out of that parasympathetic state that seems to make the body more susceptible to both allergies and asthma. So it's interesting that the scientific literature is also seeing that, wow, with this asthma, we really see that there happens to be a parasympathetic dominance that shows up a lot. So that's one factor to keep in mind. And when I connect all the dots, I think this might freak you out just a little bit. So we're going to look at these other studies, and we see here an association between irritable bowel syndrome and asthma, a meta-analysis. So this is one where they looked at a lot of different studies. And here we see in the results that the search strategy generated a total of 634 studies, and the analysis showed that asthmatics have twice the risk of having IBS, and patients with IBS have twice the risk of having asthma. Twice the risk. Either way, that's a pretty strong correlation between IBS and asthma. And over here, when we're looking at association between constipation and the development of asthma, they also found that constipation was associated with an increased risk of wheezing or asthma later in life. And now when we look at this reflux stuff, we're going to look at a paper, Gastroesophageal Reflux and Asthma. They say the prevalence of reflux among patients with asthma is estimated to be between 33 and 89%. That's kind of high. And in a survey of 150 consecutive asthma patients in France, 65% reported reflux. In a Veterans Administration population, heartburn was reported in 72% of 189 consecutive asthma patients. And more recently, Field et al. Examined 109 asthma patients and 135 subjects in 2 control groups. Heartburn was present in 77% of the asthma patients. But here's an important thing to understand, and I think that this creates some of the confusion because we look at this study, acid suppression does not change respiratory symptoms in children with asthma. In this study, they say epidemiological studies have shown an association between gastroesophageal reflux disease and asthma, and esophageal acid perfusions may cause bronchial constriction. However, no causative relation has been proven. And in this study, they basically used omeprazole, which is a PPI, which turns off our stomach acid and stops that acid reflux symptom. And they found that omeprazole treatment did not improve asthma symptoms or lung function in children with asthma and GERD. So what we're looking at here is we're looking at something that can create a lot of confusion because we see all of this connection between this wide variety of issues, especially acid reflux. But they say, yeah, but when we do this study where we turn off the acid reflux, the asthma doesn't get any better. So they're viewing it as this acid reflux coming back up is that irritant that is causing the asthma reaction. But what if that's not the case? If that's not the case, it would make sense that turning off the acid reflux symptom wouldn't really fix the asthma. Let's look into what that really could be. Because when we're looking at IBS and constipation and acid reflux, what are we really looking at? When we're looking at all of those symptoms, we're looking at digestive malfunction. Acid reflux is not caused from too much stomach acid like advertisers want us to believe. We know now that acid reflux is caused from having not enough stomach acid. This LES valve here at the bottom of the esophagus opens so food can come in, and then it closes as we digest our food. The problem is that LES valve is triggered by stomach acid. So if someone's not making enough stomach acid, it won't trigger that valve to close, and then the small amount of acid that they have comes back up and burns them. So we see all the time when people increase their stomach acid and improve the ability to actually acidify that food and break it down so they can get the nutrients out of that food, well then that reflux stops because now the stomach is acidic enough to trigger that valve to close. When we're looking at IBS, we're looking at a lot of inflammation in the stomach for a variety of reasons. But most of those reasons come from issues that are caused that are restricting your ability to digest your food correctly and get all the nutrients out of that food. This digestive process has 2 sides. It has this stomach acid side, and once that food is acidified and leaves the stomach and comes down here into the duodenum, that's when the gallbladder squirts this alkaline bile down to help neutralize those acids, and then those opposite pHs colliding, that acidic stuff from the stomach and the alkaline bile colliding, it creates this opposite pH like sizzle that really helps us bust the food apart and get all the nutrients out of that food. And that bile is also used to help us emulsify or break down our dietary fats. And we need to emulsify those fats so that we can access fat-soluble vitamins like A, E, D, and K. It's kind of a big deal. So for the body to get the nutrients that it needs to function correctly, this digestive process needs to be working well enough to get the nutrients out of the food that we're eating. We're not getting nutrients from magic. We're supposed to get them from the food that we're eating. Now the trick is, it's very common for someone not to be making enough stomach acid today for a wide variety of reasons. Millions of people turn off stomach acid on purpose. But even when that's not the case, the body may not have the ability to make enough stomach acid to really break that food down correctly. It's also very common for someone's bile to become very thick and sticky where it won't flow correctly. And now the bile's not coming down to help neutralize these acids leaving the stomach, which can send a lot of acid moving through these intestinal tracts and irritates the intestinal tract and causes all this inflammation that we see in issues like IBS and all these other digestive malfunction type conditions that we see out there. And there are other parts of the digestive process that are very important as well, but these two issues are the most common to kind of break down. And once we don't have this stomach acid there, we also don't have the barrier that keeps all the bad guys from coming in when they come in on the food that we're eating. So if that stomach acid isn't there, now we get all the SIBO issues and I got bacteria in the stomach, alkalizing the stomach even more, and I can't even break down my food. So there's a lot of issues that can go wrong in this symptom. Now this is where it's very important when we're looking at asthma. Remember that the medical world is saying we see people kind of stuck in this parasympathetic state a lot when we're dealing with asthma, and maybe this happens more in some types of asthma more than other types. We don't really know, but we see it very commonly with this parasympathetic imbalance type situation going on with asthma. And remember that the parasympathetic state is the body's rest and digest state. That's where the body's very good at breaking our food down so that it can get the nutrients out of the food so the body can function. It has a lot of functions it needs to run, so it wants those nutrients to be able to do everything properly. So when the digestive process is not working correctly, it appears that the body might say, hey, I'm just going to shove this body as far into this parasympathetic state as I can in order to boost digestion any way that I can. I need more nutrients, so I'm going to do whatever I can to push the body into a state where it's better at digesting. When someone's really stressed and they're stuck in that fight or flight state, they can't do a lot of these things. They can't produce stomach acid properly to really break down their food. So doesn't it make sense that the body would be smart enough to say, oh, well, I'm just going to shove this body into this state to help boost this whole process so I can get the nutrients that I need? Because what we see is that when you can fix some of these digestive malfunctions, a lot of times it can improve that parasympathetic imbalance, and for some people you'll see an improvement to either allergy symptoms or asthma symptoms. Now remember, this isn't diagnostic. I've never seen a study. Let's do a study on what happens if we improve digestive symptoms, and does it fix a parasympathetic imbalance, and then does that fix allergies? No, I've never seen a study like that. Maybe if you're a study maker, maybe you could do a study like that and see what happens. When you're seeing all of these connections between all of these digestive symptoms and asthma, and we hear from people on a daily basis that improve their digestive symptoms. They're able to improve their digestive function and improve those symptoms. So if you can improve those symptoms, does your asthma improve? I don't know. That's what I want to hear from you. I want to know if yours does. Another thing that you can do when we're looking at beyond just the digestive malfunctions are we want to know what are signs of this parasympathetic imbalance. And these are some things that you could even do at home on your own. And these are not diagnostic things, but they can give you a little picture of what may be going on. And if these things line up for you, well, it makes sense. Oh, what if I put some attention towards correcting this imbalance? Do these symptoms improve for me as well? And one thing that we like to do is we like to look at what's called the pulse pressure. And when you just look at your blood pressure while in a rested state, and you get that systolic number and the diastolic number. Well, if you subtract the diastolic number from the systolic, that resultant is called a pulse pressure. So we put that in this formula here, and if that number is greater than 46, we view that as an indication that that person is leaning a little bit too in that fight or flight state. Again, not diagnostic, but we see this a lot where it really lines up. And if that pulse pressure is lower than 37, that can be an indication that the person might be leaning a little too far on that parasympathetic side. And then we look at other factors too when we're looking at imbalances, just to get an idea. Is somebody having like a really hard gag reflex? That can be a marker of a parasympathetic imbalance. And we even use allergies and asthma as a marker for a parasympathetic imbalance because it's so common to see those issues with this imbalance. And just remember, if a person's taking allergy or asthma medications, some of those seem to have the ability to push a person more into that sympathetic state. So on those medications, you might run these tests and you might seem like, oh, I'm leaning more towards the sympathetic state. Well, that would make sense if you were taking those types of medications. So when we're looking at the steps to take to improve asthma type situations, well, first of all, if there happens to be a parasympathetic imbalance that appears to be going on, improving that imbalance seems to be the priority since that seems to line up so much with the asthma type symptoms. And if there's any type of digestive symptoms at all, any burping or bloating or acid reflux or constipation or diarrhea or nausea or indigestion, maybe food just kind of feels like it sits there like a rock in your stomach for hours, or even acne or skin issues. All of these can be signs that the digestive process is not working correctly, and if that's the case, is your body trying to push yourself more into that parasympathetic state just to boost digestion? And if you were able to improve those digestive functions, would it allow the body not to feel like it needed to push you into that state so hard? And could that relieve some of these symptoms? That's really what you want to know. And the third step could be just to monitor your progress. If you take steps to improve your digestion, do the signs of that parasympathetic imbalance seem to improve? You can really monitor how that's going and know if you're moving in the right direction or not. For some people, these issues are not going to be the cause of their asthma. There's some other type of irritant or some other type of problem that's creating the issue for them. But if you can take steps to improve digestion and get rid of a symptom anyways, doesn't it make sense to at least see if that's something that's going to improve the situation for you? It just kind of makes sense. So if you want to jump into this a little bit more and understand this parasympathetic imbalance a little bit better, jump over and check out our video on understanding a parasympathetic imbalance. I hope that helps.